Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today is the beginning of a 3-part series, and I'm going to tell the stories of working under a toxic boss in a toxic job, a job that became toxic in the cosmetic industry. And this was a huge pivotal job for me and a pivotal moment in my life. And to be honest, I'm feeling anxious and I have been wanting to do these episodes. I've had them in my head for about a year and I just really haven't had the energy to do it. And the reason why is that it's requiring me to go back in time and go through a lot of paperwork. So I want to tell this story as best as I can. And that means going through all the paper trail from this job. And there is a lot. So just to set the stage of what my desk looks like right now, Declan popped into my office and he's like, oh my God, it looks like you're recording a Joe Rogan episode or something with like so much research. I think it looks a little bit more CSI. I mean, there's not quite the board on the wall with the strings attaching everything together, but I probably have at least 30 pieces of paperwork in front of me. I need to see things in print. And you may even hear me moving paperwork around. I really want to try and capture as many things accurately, but I do want to preface by saying that this is my experience through my lens with my memory. So we are human and inevitably I will be getting things wrong, I think, or they will be maybe different than what actually happened. That is why I really did want as many printed notes as possible, because while I was going through this experience, and I recommend this to anyone going through a challenging job, is that you have to write things down as they're happening. You need the paper trail to reference down to every single meeting, every conversation, just capture it. So I was doing that. So hence the massive amount of paperwork in front of me, the notes I've taken, the things I want to talk about and reference. And yeah, I'm going to try and capture this as best as I can. And Declan was like, why are you doing this in a way? Because as I was getting ready to record this morning and I'm going through everything, I'm starting to feel major physical anxiety symptoms. I'm feeling stressed. You can kind of hear it in my voice already. I'm feeling tense. I'm feeling kind of nauseous. Just that hot feeling that comes over you when you're really upset about something and you're almost going to cry, but you can't cry and you're just still mad. Those feelings have been just flooding me all morning. But I feel that this story needs to be told for a bunch of reasons, in part because I cannot tell you how many people recently in my life have been going through similar stories. And I have, as much as I can, helped or are helping them walk through it because I've been through something similar. And it's just happening to so many people. There are so many people out there that are living through a toxic job because of a toxic boss situation. I don't really feel like my job was a toxic job. It really became toxic primarily through this boss. So many people are going through this. And truly, the intention for these episodes is to know you're not alone. And it doesn't matter how good you are at your job. It doesn't matter how competent you are, how talented you are. You can find yourself in a situation like this. Some people don't. There are some people who just kind of skate through their career and nothing really eventful happens. I am not one of those people, but on the plus side, it gives me content for the podcast because I have had, as I always say, a non-linear career. There have been many ups and downs. I'm really happy to report that right now everything feels pretty stable in my career. I've done a lot of work to not bring in a lot of toxic situations and keep them at bay, and also to recognize the red flags. And so I hope you will see some potential red flags here if you are looking at a job or considering a job, or something's not feeling right about your job, this may kind of spark something for you. I will absolutely kind of share how I coped and some coping mechanisms that you can do. But ultimately, this is just going to be a story about my experience. So I'm going to split it into 3 parts. So I also had to come up with a name for the boss, and the petulant inner child in me, the one that is still upset about this situation or wish that it didn't happen, came up with a lot of names to call her for this episode or this series. But I'm going to take the high road and just call her Jane. Okay, so Jane is the boss. And the company in question, I'm also just going to call them Blush Cosmetics. I think the benefit of me calling them a different name is it just maybe covers my ass a bit. I don't think it matters at this point, but I'm just going to, I'll call them Blush Cosmetics. If you are really curious, just head on over to my LinkedIn. You can see everything there. And then the other thing I want to note is that before I dive in, I really recommend going back to episode 14, which is called How Toxic Bosses Hide in Plain Sight. And that is a very short episode. I think it's 10 or 11 minutes long. And it's a story, a blog that I wrote about this experience. It is the synopsis of this whole story. So I sometimes find it's really helpful to know the whole story before you dive into all of the little pieces, and gives you an idea of what's to come. And with that, I'm just going to dive into part 1, which is the before. So before Jane came onto the scene as my boss at Blush Cosmetics. So how I ended up at this cosmetics company is a little bit of chance, a lot of perseverance. I didn't expect to go and work in a cosmetics company. I have always really loved makeup. So I love to dive into personal development. Let's talk about quantum physics, multiple realities, all of that stuff. But I'm also down to talk about mascara for half an hour if we want to. I've always loved makeup. I kind of did makeup training and worked on some plays and did all that stuff. So it's in my zone of competence. It's in my area of interest. I've always worked in women's lifestyle brands. Like that's really where I've kind of found my groove. And before I started at Blush, I was working as an art director at the shopping channel. The shopping channel, which is also called TSC, is the equivalent of the QVC in the States. So it's online or TV shopping. And I was working as an art director, art directing photo shoots that were going on air for products and promotions. And it was a really unique experience. But here's the thing. So 2 weeks into the job, which was just a contract, I was just working hourly, I knew I could not handle it anymore. So it was insanely long days. It was often 11-hour days, and I was commuting from Toronto to Mississauga, which is just an awful, awful drive. So getting there wasn't too bad. I would get there in under an hour, but coming home could take me 2 hours. It was just completely exhausting, and I knew that I had to leave the job. So 2 weeks in, I'm like, okay, I got to start looking for a job. So of course, I'm on LinkedIn, and I see a job for graphics and creative manager at Blush Cosmetics. And so timeline here, this is the summer of 2018. And I landed the job and started there August 2018. So I see the job posted. I don't know anyone who works there. I haven't necessarily worked in makeup or beauty in that exact capacity. However, I definitely had a lot of the skills. So it was part manager, part hands-on designing. And I've always kept up my design skills, even as an art director. I found that was really helpful and important because the days of art directors being hands-off and just telling everyone what to do, they're long gone. I think those ended before the 2000s. Like it's just around the 2000s, like mid-2000s. So you do have to keep up to date on your skills, your tech skills, and I had that. So I applied to this job on LinkedIn, knowing nobody. I did connect with the marketing director that was working there at the time. So I had a boss before the toxic boss, Jane, came on board. And she was the one I ended up interviewing with, along with the general manager. I'm going to call the general manager Alex. So I had to get my ass together and my shit together for these interviews. So somehow I got a call for an initial job interview. And I remember I was at the shopping channel at my desk when I got a call from HR. I was really excited, had the initial phone interview, went well, which led to a series of other interviews. And it was a pretty long process, and it was drawn out because it was a summer and people were away. And there was a very large component where I had to do a project, a test project. And I knew this was going to come. And I understand why companies do this. I mean, of course, it's a lot of work. And the reason why I was okay with it is that they were asking me to design graphics for a campaign that had passed a couple years ago. So it was not viable artwork that they would have been able to reuse and put out there. So they were not getting free labor out of me or free ideas. So that's the main thing. If you are asked to do any kind of test project, you want to make sure that what you're creating is not something that can be actually used and implemented, because then that's not cool. That's not right. So, okay, long story short, we get the job, and I was standing in line at the cafeteria at the shopping channel when I got an email from HR saying we'd like to offer you a position with a contract. I think it's important and kind of funny to note because I help so many people with like salary negotiation and all those things. I had no idea what the job paid. Like, I was all the way through the interview process. I didn't ask that. I didn't almost care. I wanted this job so badly. And I think that's important to note. It wasn't like I'm just going to sort of take this job because it's sort of something I want to do. I really wanted this job. I liked the brand. It was very pink. I'm a very pink person in many ways. It just was, I thought, a great fit. And another part, like, I was kind of shocked that they were hiring me because I was a little bit older, definitely older than a lot of people I was working with. So it felt like a real win because ageism exists out there. And I was just shocked. And I remember a few people I told that I was interviewing there, they're like, oh, wow, the chances of getting that are like slim to none. Totally true. So I just want to note that I got the job through basically an application on LinkedIn, knowing no one there. And it just somehow worked. And of course, I had my online portfolio. So I get the job and resigned from the shopping channel, which was so good to do. Although I learned, oh my God, so much there within just the 3 months I was there. So I started at Blush, and I walk into the office the first day, and it's like the laptop's ready. There's a massive bag of makeup on my desk. Everyone is so friendly, and I can't tell you how happy I was. And I also always want to note that people assume that because I was working for a very large cosmetics company, that it was going to be like The Devil Wears Prada. It was not. I mean, there was drama that went down, and there's drama that went down. But to this day, I am friends with people I worked with there. I loved pretty well everyone I worked with. They were some of the smartest, most talented, competent people. And I remember just feeling so relieved with just a couple days of recognizing the competency of the team and how everyone did have their shit together and they really knew what they were talking about. And I worked on a lot of marketing teams. Like, I was part of the marketing team. The marketing director was my boss, who were not great. And just calling a spade here at the shopping channel, it was a pretty weak marketing team with the exception of a couple of people. Everyone was kind of flailing. Like, it wasn't great. So I was thrilled to be working on this team. And it was really fun. I worked very closely with the visual merchandising team, so I had to learn a ton about that. I didn't know a lot. Visual merchandising is when you go into Shoppers Drug Mart or Sephora and there's a huge display. The big displays that you see, like in Sephora, that are with all the products, it's called a gondola. So I had to learn all about designing for gondolas. In our office, we had a Shoppers Drug Mart gondola set up. So it's like walking into a cosmetic like dreamland every day. Eventually, we also had a Sephora gondola. And I had a very small team that was doing design work. And as I said, this story is really going to be about me. So I'm not going to talk about really anyone on my team. And I'm definitely not going to talk about anybody else's experience in the company, which is in a way hard because everything, it would be a huge lie for me to say that I was the only one affected by this experience. Also by this boss. That's just, I can't say that and be not lying. So other people have been affected. There has been a tsunami of repercussions from this person's behavior that is beyond just my experience. However, I'm really going to try and keep it to just about me today. out of respect for everybody else. So had a very small design team, and honestly, job's going great. So 6 months in, the marketing director who basically was involved in hiring me, who I got along great with, had huge respect for, I really was so grateful for everything she taught me. And also she would give me, I could have a touch base with her regularly, and I just learned a lot. She was invested. She was invested in working with me and really helping me succeed. And I really appreciated that. So 6 months into it, she announces that she is going to leave the position to pursue her own thing. So we were all pretty shocked, or I was shocked. I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. But I'm pretty new to the company and I don't really know the dynamics. It takes a while, right? I'm keeping my head down, literally just trying to do the work. And like I was thrown into, trial by fire. I think the first couple days I'm there, I was designing graphics for a booth display for some Shoppers Drug Mart conference, a beauty conference or something. So I'm designing all the graphics and basically designing a booth. Now, I've designed graphics for booths, but never like being like, okay, this is what the booth's going to look like I was also doing this with the visual merchandising team. So it was just a lot. Okay, so it was a lot I had to figure out. And then suddenly 6 months later, my boss is leaving. So this is where things kind of get interesting. No one was hired right away to replace her. They start looking for work, and basically they start looking to fill the position, and basically the GM, we'll call her Alex again, is, looking for someone to fill the role. And what was interesting is that Alex really wanted the rest of the marketing team, including people from PR and the marketing assistant and other people, digital social media people, to be involved in the hiring process, in that we were in some of the interviews with some of the candidates because we are a very small team. And I think this is what is always shocking to learn, is that these multi-million-dollar companies, so, I'm working for this Blush Cosmetics, the Canadian division. It's an international company, global company. How small the staff is, like how few people are creating all of this work that goes out into the world, and how many people keep it afloat. So I think our Canadian office had between 30 and 40 people, and that's including, I believe, some of the, the reps that were going out to the different stores. So it was a really small team. And the marketing team, I don't know, there was like 8 or 9 of us in total. So that's including PR. So it was very small. All of us are keeping, the wheels going while we had no marketing director. Now, they were looking for one, and we were in on some of the interviews. But here's what's interesting is we went 15 months without any marketing director. So there was a more junior marketing person who was incredible at her job. And there was obviously all the other people and the design team and the creative and all that. And we just kept it going. We just kept the truck moving. And, I'd only been there 6 months, but we're just doing it. And we all reported into, because there was no marketing director, into the GM, who was so busy that we really didn't have to talk to her very often and, just didn't have much to do with. Now, I was okay with the GM. However, about 2 months into my job, I saw a huge red flag, and it was from an incident that happened, and it explained a lot of what was going to happen down the line. So I was there, again, about 2 months, and we used to do these visual merchandising critiques. So we would create graphics, we would mock them up at these gondolas in our office, like, okay, let's pretend it's for Shoppers Drug Mart. This is what we want it to look like. We would literally print things out, stick things down, be like, okay, this is what the design will be potentially, or these are options. We always did multiple options. In fact, I became kind of notorious there for creating all the options, which I still do. I know a lot of people in the design community will say, don't give too many options. And I agree with not too many, but sidebar, if you don't give enough options, they will think you haven't creatively explored everything, and then they will get cranky. So you don't want that. So provide all the options. But there was a meeting going on that I actually wasn't too involved in. I was just kind of sitting in, there was like, basically it was an open space. We had like 2 big open spaces, kind of open concept office. And there's a meeting going on, and the general manager, Alex, just loses her shit about something and starts going off and off and off on a particular person, and they were berating this person. It was like a public humiliation because she was talking so loud, the whole office could hear. So it wasn't like, you know what, I'm going to offline this. Let's take it, let's talk about this issue in private. No, it became this whole public event, and it was completely demeaning. It was completely unnecessary. And you could feel everyone in the office curling up into themselves because they're so uncomfortable. And I just remember thinking, oh, okay, so this is how it can be. So I might be next in this because it can happen to anybody. Everyone's going to be fair game. This is how this person likes to handle conflict, or in this moment is handling it this way. And I just knew. I was like, oh, this might not be very good down the line. So I remember that incident happening, but for the most part, job is great. We're, again, living without this marketing director for 15 months, which basically, if that happens, I think everyone should get a promotion and a raise because we're carrying the load, right? And that just goes to show you how competent everyone is. Okay, so enjoying the job, working pretty normal hours. I'm in downtown Toronto, grateful for the job, love who I'm working with, free makeup. I joke that I literally got paid to shop at Sephora. Like, we would do store visits, and like a whole bunch of us, like a little pink pack, would descend on Sephora, and we'd have to shop around it and look at competitors and products and literally test things and analyze how they've just, done their visual displays. And I mean, that's fun, right? Like, it was enjoyable. It was like, I remember thinking too that this is a time in my life that probably will never happen again. And I'm going to enjoy this. And as I said, I loved the people that I was working with. Okay, so things are going well. And then one day we get an email. The marketing team gets an email after they'd interviewed a few people, but we hadn't heard much. We didn't know why the job wasn't being filled. I mean, 15 months is a long time to be without a marketing director. And there was 1 million people lined up to be in this marketing director position, right? Because it was a huge company. And every time I told someone that I worked at this company, they're like, oh my God, you're so lucky. Like, that's like the dream job. And in many ways it was. So one day we just get this email, and from the GM, Alex, it's like, we have hired a marketing director. Meet Jane. And it's this blurb about this woman named Jane. And we were all completely shocked. Where did she come from? And she was coming from kind of a sister company, a different country, totally different background, kind of in marketing, sort of in the lifestyle world. But because there was a very large company that owned Blush Cosmetics, right? So it was like a huge, not only were we huge and global, but they own like 1 billion companies. So she was coming from one of the smaller companies, and it just came out of left field. It was just suddenly, this person is going to be your boss. And we were all very shocked because, again, we had been in on some of the interviews. We were being told, what's happening. And suddenly we have this person coming on the team and starting soon. Now, what's important to note is that this is just before the pandemonium time, which is where everything shut down, March of 2020, right? So this is just a little bit before then. So that also, because it was such a stressful time, down the line makes things even worse. And I think just made the whole experience even harder. But we just suddenly got this email. And here's what is interesting. So, of course, what are you going to do when you get the name of who's going to be your new boss? You Google them. You look them up. And I looked her up, and I believe I saw her LinkedIn profile. And as soon as I saw her picture, I had this awful feeling. That deep feeling in your gut where you know that things are not good. Now, I will say that this is not uncommon for me. I can look at a picture of someone and I get an immediate feeling. Interestingly, when I see people in real life, I don't get as strong a read. And I think that's in part because I'm so thinking about what I'm going to say and making sure I remember their name. And I just don't always get the same feeling. But when I see a photo of someone, I get an immediate impression. And in this case, the impression was not good. I highly recommend reading the book. It's from 2006, a long time ago, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, which his talks a lot about this immediate feeling that everyone gets. Doesn't matter if you're not intuitive or not. When you see something, I think the opening story is about whether a piece of art or a sculpture was a fake or real, and this person knew it was fake right away. Also, this kind of feeling that I get is very helpful on LinkedIn because I can see a logo from a company, and it doesn't matter if it's a shitty designed logo or a great designed logo. I can see a logo and I immediately get an impression about the company as what kind of vibe it is. It's really interesting. So I see this picture of Jane and I have a deep, awful feeling in the pit of my stomach. Does not feel good. I'm not happy. And like we were so just grooving, doing our own thing without having a boss, really. It was, again, everyone was highly competent. So in walks this person. I believe we met online first because, we're heading into the Zoom days, everything. I mean, like she and her family came to Canada at that kind of crazy time. And it begins the story of working with Jane and having to navigate this experience that I kind of knew was going to go off the rails. I didn't really know how much. I didn't understand how hostile this person would be. In the end, I believe she was a covert narcissist. If you want to kind of dive into the world of narcissism, which I think is helpful for a lot of people that have had toxic bosses, because I would say 95% of the time, they are some kind of narcissist. And so as opposed to a grandiose narcissist who's like very much obviously all about me, a covert one is more subtle, but they are definitely hostile. They are definitely arrogant, entitled, seeking validation. They will dismiss you. They will passive-aggressive comments. They think they know better all the time. They mock people for sure. And they really contribute nothing. And that is what starts to happen when I start working with Jane. So I'm going to dive into more of this in part 2. And let me tell you that if you don't make it through all the episodes, when something crazy in your life happens that totally derails you, there is a reason, and you can't really see it at the beginning. It's exceptionally painful. I still wish in many ways that I didn't go through this experience, but when something derails you this intensely, it is meant to put you on a different path. And I'm telling you, there is nothing, like I had to change paths from this experience, right? It was like I'm going along, wearing my makeup, having my just fun days, and then I'm taking a sharp turn, right? Okay, so I'm going to end it here. And part 2, I'm going to dive into exactly what happens when I started working with Jane. Take care, guys. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.